There he is, folks. Uesugi Kenshin, one of the most famous feudal lords of Sengoku Jidai, Japan. Won many battles and is most famously known for taking on Takeda Shingen at the battles of Kawanakajima. And I think he's one of the coolest figures of the time period. And honestly, I think the Uesugi are probably my favorite classic battle faction. Now, Naginata warrior monks are one of the most, maybe the most, at least when I think of Total War Shogun 2, Naginata warrior monks are the first unit I think of. I think they are so indicative of the time period. Katana samurai, of course, fall into that category as well, samurai in general, but I think they are very, very, they just have this aura about them, they just have this look about them that I think is so cool. And if I put up a list of my favorite units throughout the entire series, Zweihanders from the Holy Roman Empire are up there. Virlorn Hof, or Forlorn Hope from the Holy Roman Empire, are up there. Naginata warrior monks from Shogun 2 are up there. And then maybe a couple of other units, maybe Royal Cataphracts from the Parthians on Rome 2. But Naginata warrior monks, definitely one of my favorite units of all time in Total War. I mean, you just look at them. Level of detail on these guys is awesome, and what they can do in melee is what really makes them special. Warcry, one of the best units. Warcry makes them one of the best units in the game for sure. I don't know exactly what the morality buff. I think it might be -3 when you pop it. Causes complete chain routes. And in classic battle, I think they are maybe the best core for a unit, except maybe Yarya Shigaru and Spearwall. They are very, very strong, and they are probably the most elite unit. If you just take the vanilla unit, probably the most elite unit in Sengoku Jidai, Japan. Which, historically, may not be accurate. I'm sure that a heavily armored samurai unit would probably be able to beat a Buddhist monk in melee, but again, I'm not sure about that. I don't know how often they clashed, actually, in feudal Japan, but today, I'll be playing Sir Tree of Arbor. He is bringing the Iko Iki with a Lone Sword Ashigaru core. Very interesting. Has 4 chevrons on most of them here, and as the Iko Iki, you have to bring some kind of different army builds because they don't have the same unit selection that most of them do. And in fact, I was saying in my last video that Sengoku Jidai Japan clans generally aren't very different. The Iko Iki is an exception to that. They have Lone Sword Ashigaru. No other faction in the game has access to these guys. Obviously in Avatar Conquest everyone does. But in Classic, the Iko Iki are the only ones that have them. They're the only ones with Matchlock Warrior Monks. They're the only ones with Katana Ronin, which are basically a worse version of Katana Samurai. And they are the only ones with access to Naginata Warrior Monk Cav as well, which actually have a different skin in Classic than they do in Avatar Conquest. Let's get into it now. We are on Lowlands here, and I have brought a very Cav-heavy build, as I like to do on Total War Shogun 2. Lots of Yari Cav, Katana Cav, some Great Guard as well. And then Matchlock Samurai, Warrior Monks, and Yarya Shigaru up at the front. Backed up, of course, by Uesugi Kenshin. So, what I want to do here, and just looking at the army builds, I feel like I have an advantage, for sure. In the middle here is the river that's going to slow down his rush. Obviously, he has no ranged units, so it's going to be very focused on rushing for him. But he's going to have to cross a river and go uphill to meet me in melee. And matchlocks are very good at causing morale penalties as enemies run into melee combat. So if I position my matchlocks right here and force him to cross the river, that's not going to be very fun for him. He is going to have the advantage of the morale shrine. That is one of the kind of crappy things on a couple of these maps, is that you can sometimes get screwed on the dojos. Like, the farmhouse is a nice dojo to have. Gives me increased stamina and movement speed for all my units, but I don't really want to kite away from this river. I want to make him cross and then fight him right here, so not that useful. Whereas on the other hand, he's going to get +3 morale for all of his units, so that kind of sucks. But then again, I'm also going to get the workshop and give +3 defense and 1 armor to all of my units, so it's a decent trade-off, but occasionally you get screwed on the dojos, and that's just a part of Shogun 2. So, gonna position my matchlocks up here, and what he's going to do, and as you saw in last battle, he really loves these suicide cav tactics. With light cav, it definitely makes a lot more sense than with Yari cav because they are so cheap. But I think he is too suicidal with his cavalry, and it's kind of a theme that I've noticed when I've played him before. And I'm not trying to be judgmental at all because I think Surtry has proven that he is a very good player. But sometimes I think he's too suicidal with his cavalry. So like right here, gonna run directly into a Yari Ashigaru spear wall. Gonna lose 450 Koku for nothing, and he's not gonna kill any matchlocks, so kind of useless. But his charge is coming now, and he didn't have spears. So Katana Cavalry is gonna go directly into his Iko-Iki Longsword Ashigaru, and this is the kind of melee fight that you want Katana Cavalry to be in. They are fantastic against sword units. If you can send them in to tie down a large blob of swords, this is the kind of fight they want to be in. Especially against lone swords. Look at that, they're already up to almost 50 kills. 18 attack will shred through them very, very quickly, and then backed up by Naginata Warrior Monks, that's going to go very well for me. I wasn't able to pull out my matchlocks in time, so they're probably going to die in melee. But all across the line, I have my Naginata Warrior Monks in melee combat with his Longsword Ashigaru. They will win this fight for sure. The advantage that my opponent has is that he has numbers. And if he's able to flank at all, I might be in trouble. Because while I do have very high morale with these Naginata Warrior Monks, they are susceptible to flanking because they don't have very high armor, so rear charges completely devastate them. Over on my left flank, I have Great Guard engaged with his Naginata Warrior Monks. That's an easy fight for Great Guard to win. Naginata Warrior Monk Cav are a good unit for sure, but they cannot handle the charge of Great Guard. So if you want to do this kind of fight, you have to have Yari Ashigaru or some kind of spear or Naginata unit backing them up because they will not be able to sustain in melee against the spear cavalry like Great Guard. In the middle here, Katana Cav are still tanking like a boss, almost up to 100 kills at this point. Doing very well for me. And this is just going to be a melee grind at this point. All of Surtry of Arbor's units are engaged at this point except for maybe one cav unit that he's trying to flank around. But I have more than enough units to deter this Naginata Warrior Monk from getting a devastating rear charge off. Which is really the only way I can win at this point. Or only way that he can win at this point is if he gets a really good hammer and anvil off. I was able to win the left flank, so now my men are starting to press in on the flank here. And although they do have the morale shrine, Longsword Ashigaru are inherently low morale units, so they cannot stand a fight for very long. And the Katana Ronin are just as good as Katana Samurai, except they have 30 men less in each unit. So they don't have quite the sustainability that Katana Samurai have as well. So this has turned into a very, very bloody battle. By the way, that does remind me, I should get the blood pack for this at some point. I bought it for Madness, but haven't even bought it for myself yet. So I should probably do that. But my Katana Samurai, or my Katana Cav are still alive. And with these matchlock volleys and a rear charge from Great Guard, I will be able to cause the rest of these guys to chain route. So, first mistake I think Surtry of Arbor made there was that he didn't bring any spear units up front to block charges from my cav. Now I think he did have enough cavalry to deal with my guys, but he wasn't able to utilize them very effectively because he didn't have any spears, to back them up. And with the Naginata Warrior Monk Cavalry, I think it's very important to have a dedicated spear unit like a Yari Samurai with rapid advance or a Yari Ashigaru to stay very close to them because they're melee cav. They're a lot like Katana cav in that they sustain in melee for a very long time because they have relatively high defense and high attack, but they're not good on the charge and they have low armor. So a Great Guard charge into a Naginata Warrior Monk cav will always wipe them out pretty hard. So the way you counter that is you keep the Naginata Warrior Monk cav close to your lines. Don't take a cav fight versus Yari cav with them. Or if you do, make sure that a Yari Ashigaru is there to absorb the charge. And that'll be a great way to turn the cav fight in your favor with them. Yeah, I got my 2 Katana Cavs straight into the middle of his sword units. And if that happens, that's always going to be a bad sign for the melee engagement. Because what Katana Cav is designed to do is kill enemy sword units. They die very quickly to matchlock fire, ranged fire, or spears. but if they're in swords, they will cause a lot of havoc, and that's what you saw that battle. I think some range units would have been pretty useful for him as well. He attacked across the river, and that's a hard thing to do against a faction that is utilizing matchlocks. He had to run directly into matchlock fire and directly into Naginata warrior monk units that were having a downhill charge. It wasn't a huge terrain advantage for me, but there was definitely one, and he was kind of fighting uphill, and that kind of made it more difficult for him as well. Ikoiki is a very interesting faction. I actually did an overview of that faction maybe a year or so ago. I believe it's called the Eco Way. So if you haven't seen what they're capable of doing in classic battle mode, I think maybe you might want to go watch that replay. I talk much more in depth about what the Ikoiki, their units, and what they're capable of doing. But overall, really enjoyed that battle again. Thank you to Surtree of Arbor for playing with me. And he definitely has... I didn't even want to play Shogun 2, if I'm honest, but he got me back into it a little bit, and when I started playing, I remembered how much I love this game, and how I think the multiplayer is better than Rome 2. And some of you might disagree with me, but it's where I started my Total War multiplayer experience, and I think there will always be room in my heart for this game. I do love it. I love it to death. So again, hope you guys enjoyed it, and actually, if anyone wants to get some games in with me on Shogun 2, add Indie Pride on Steam. I would definitely be interested in playing with some subscribers, and at some point I actually might end up doing a subscriber game night here while I'm on Christmas break for Shogun 2 and Rome 2. I actually just came up with that idea, but that sounds like a good one. So if you guys would be interested in doing that, playing with me, and joining me on a Skype call or something where I record all the games, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Other than that, I will talk to you all later. Peace out.